going over GYN cancer and nutrition. And I want to apologize ahead of time. I didn't have PowerPoint when preparing my slides, so there's a lot of information, so it could be overwhelming, but we'll go over all of it at a good pace. By the end of this presentation, I'm hoping that everyone will know how foods can be used to provide relief for various symptoms, calm inflammation, and prevent cancer, and feed our microbiome and strengthen our immune system. So first, we'll go over common symptoms and how they can be managed with food. It's what we call medical nutrition therapy. And nausea is one of the more prevalent, more common symptoms that my patients experience. And I'm sure most of you have or already know this, that ginger can be very useful in helping manage this. Ginger is safe and inexpensive. The component in ginger that helps with nausea include 6-gingerol, 6-shegol, and zingerol. And these inhibit serotonin binding to the 5-HT receptor, thus preventing nausea. And ginger can be used in combination with anti-nausea medication, so it's not going to interact with it. It can just help, manage the nausea even better. In terms of dosing, it's been found that about 1,000 milligrams or 1 gram of ginger root per day is considered to be safe. And we usually recommend about 250 milligrams of ginger QID, which is 4 times a day, which can be equivalent to these amounts here. So a teaspoon of freshly grated ginger, 2 milliliters of liquid ginger extract, 4 cups of prepared prepackaged ginger tea, 2 teaspoons of ginger syrup, or 2 pieces of crystallized ginger. And some contraindications are if you're going into surgery, or if you have a bleeding disorder, or have a history of gallstones, you really want to avoid having large amounts of ginger. Okay, so other ways to manage nausea that can help are a low-fat diet, and also including cool, acidic foods, and having small, frequent meals. You really want to make sure you're not skipping any meals. Anytime you go for a longer period of time, anything up, past 4 hours, your stomach can start to build acids, and that can trigger nausea as well. So small, frequent meals, as you see on the right-hand side of the screen, are some sample or examples of like snacks or small meals. Okay, so constipation, we typically recommend high fiber foods. You typically want 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day. Foods that include fiber are your whole grains, legumes, also beans, vegetables, and fruit. And you're really looking for the insoluble fiber part of these plant foods. It's the indigestible part, and what that does is it pulls fluid into the colon to help loosen your bowel movements. And also you want to make sure that you're increasing fiber in your diet gradually. Anytime you go from not having fiber to having a ton of fiber, you can run the risk of maybe exacerbating or making the constipation worse, or even having some gas and bloating. So your body needs to adjust to the amount of fiber that you have in your diet. You also want to make sure that you're, drinking lots of fluids and staying hydrated. As the fiber is pulling fluid into the colon, you really want to replace that fluid in the body. So make sure you drink at least 6 to 8 cups of fluid per day, or you can calculate it by doing 1 milliliter of fluid per calorie that you're taking in. Also, I don't know if any of you have tried this fruit paste, but I've gotten some good feedback from many of our patients. But this particular recipe can be used to help manage constipation as well. So it's about a half pound each of prunes, figs, and dates or raisins. And you'll want to cook that in prepared senna tea, 1 cup. Typically, we like to recommend brewing with loose leaf. However, you can use the bags too, that's fine. And so you'll cook that for about 5 minutes. You'll let it cool, and then you'll put it in a blender, and then you'll mix it up and then add a 1/2 cup of lemon juice just to kind of cut the sweetness. And we recommend to have about 2 to 3 teaspoons a day. You can add it to oatmeal, you can spread it over toast, you can put it in a smoothie, or you can have it as is on its own. So 2 to 3 teaspoons is, you know, a good amount to have on a daily basis to help manage the constipation. So diarrhea. For diarrhea, we typically recommend a bland, low-fat, low-lactose diet. Oftentimes, fat and lactose can make diarrhea worse. I'm sure a lot of the moms out there are familiar with the brat diet, bananas, rice, applesauce, toast. These are foods that help to bind the stool. We're really looking for the soluble fiber part of the fruits and vegetables, and which is a gel-like substance in the plant foods. And what that does is it absorbs the excess fluid and helps to create a more solid stool. Also, remember to stay hydrated to prevent any issues of like feeling dizzy or even falling due to low blood pressure. I usually recommend using bone broth just because there's a good amount of protein in it. You can use regular broth, however, and then some low sugar hydration drinks. There's so many out there. I typically recommend Noon tablets, which is kind of like an Alka-Seltzer or an effervescent tablet that dissolves in water, or Pedialyte Advanced Care Plus. Okay, so bloating and gas, you know, I think a lot of us are familiar with foods that can cause gas. So high fiber foods typically are all the stuff that we, you know, recommend for you to have in your diet, unfortunately. Cauliflower, all the cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage. Fruits include peaches, apples, pears, prunes, beans, bran, and whole wheat products. Everybody's different, so, you know, I'm not saying that everybody's going to experience gas with all of these foods, but this is just in general. Also, I'm not sure if you're all familiar with the term FODMAP, but there has been a lot of information on how starches and sugars can cause a significant amount of gas and bloating in certain people. And FODMAP stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. And following, there are lists of, you know, what foods contain these particular starches. So for oligosaccharides, you can be found in wheat, rye, legumes, certain fruits and vegetables, such as garlic and onions. Fructans and galactans are the main sugars in the oligosaccharide group that tend to cause the issues. Disaccharides are going to be found in dairy foods, so milk, yogurt, and soft cheeses, and lactose is the main sugar that's that can cause the issue. Monosaccharides would include various fruits, including figs, mangoes, certain sweeteners such as honey and agave, and fructose in this group tends to be the main sugar in there. And then polyols, certain fruits and vegetables, including blackberries and lychee, as well as low-calorie sweeteners and sugar-free gums. So mannitol, sorbitol, and xylitol can sometimes cause bloating and gas. Also, I know a lot of people are, you know, kind of on this gluten-free diet. Gluten can cause some issues, especially if you have celiac disease. You want to avoid it completely. If you feel like you have a gluten intolerance, I would definitely, consult a gastroenterologist to maybe do some workup. Because I think a lot of people have been not diagnosed and unaware of the fact that their body has a difficult time breaking down gluten, so they go for a long time experiencing these digestive issues. So how to manage gas and bloating? Of course, try to avoid gas-causing foods. Unfortunately, there are a lot of foods that we recommend to help prevent cancer and keep your digestion going. So, using something like Beano or Lactaid or a digestive enzyme can help. If you're interested in something like that, always talk to a dietitian. Always talk to a dietitian or your doctor to kind of help guide you in the right direction, because there's so many products out there in the supplement aisle. It's hard to figure out what's right in your situation. Also, sometimes doctors will recommend using Gas-X, which is completely safe. And then also just being mindful of the amount of air you might be swallowing while eating and drinking. And if you tend to, have more gas than normal, I would say, try not to use a straw, because we're often swallowing a lot of air when we use one. Okay, so on to inflammation. So inflammation is the body's protective reaction to harmful stimuli. Often we can, see inflammation by noticing some redness, some swelling or pain at the site, or feeling like heat around the area that the inflammation is occurring. The causes of inflammation can be acute, meaning short-term, caused by injuries, so like a broken ankle, an infection like a cold, or exposure to a substance like a chemical exposure. Chronic is more long-term, so you'll see it in long-term low-level exposure of pollutants or chemicals, so like air pollution. Some autoimmune disorders cause low-level chronic inflammation, as well as autoinflammatory diseases, such as Behçet's disease. And some factors as we age, we tend to experience a little bit more inflammation than normal. So other factors are unhealthy diet. So if you're eating a high-fat, high-sugar diet, that can lead to chronic inflammation, obesity, smoking, low sex hormones. So yeah, low estrogen has been linked to inflammation. And I know that there's, controversy with estrogen replacement therapy. So I think just discussing that further with your medical team is best to figure out if that's appropriate for you. Chronic stress can lead to chronic inflammation, as well as sleeping problems. So with inflammation, I don't know if you've all heard of the term free radicals, but free radicals can be a byproduct of inflammation. So some information about free radicals. It's an especially reactive atom or group of atoms that has one or more unpaired electrons, kind of taking you back to chemistry. Sorry about that. It can be produced in the body by natural biological process. So again, if you have a cold, just your body's processing of the virus and trying to get rid of it, it can cause some inflammation, or can be introduced from an outside source, such as tobacco, smoke, toxins, or pollutants. And they tend to damage cells, proteins, and DNA by altering their chemical structure. And so antioxidants. Antioxidants are any various substances. These are examples of some vitamins, so beta-carotene, vitamin A, vitamin C, and alpha-tocopherol with vitamin E. These inhibit oxidation or reactions promoted by oxygen and peroxides that include many held to protect the live body from deleterious effects of free radicals. So basically, what antioxidants do is they donate an electron and bind to the free radical to neutralize it so that it's no longer helpful or harmful. Definitely want to make sure that you're including a good amount of antioxidants in your diet as tolerated. And phytochemicals are biologically active, non-nutrient substance, so not a vitamin, not a protein, not a mineral, but they're non-nutrient substance found in plants, which include antioxidants and phytosterols. Foods that contain antioxidants and phytochemicals include, of course, vegetables and fruits. So the various colors contain different antioxidants. The red, purples, and blues, you can get lycopene, resveratrol, ellagic acid, and anthocyanine. The greens, you can find isothiocyanates, pramine and lutein. The yellow and orange fruits and vegetables, you can get beta-carotene and vitamin C. And for grains, and legumes, you can find selenium, lignans, beta-glucan, and phenolic compounds. This is a chart to kind of give you more information on the different phytochemicals that are found in foods. So the left, you'll see the phytochemicals. The middle, you'll see the food sources that you can get them from. And then on the right, the possible benefits. So for example, the flavonoids, such as anthocyanins and quercetin, you can find in apples, citrus fruits, onions, soybeans, and soy products, as well as coffee and tea. They've been researched to possibly inhibit inflammation and tumor growth, and they can aid in immunity and boost production of detoxifying enzymes in the body. So, yeah, again, you know, trying to include these foods in the diet is definitely recommended. So as a guide to an anti-inflammation diet, I like to use Dr. Weil's pyramid here. You want to take it with a grain of salt because during treatment, you know, it does say that, you know, supplements are recommended. However, you know, with treatment, there's a possibility that certain supplements can interfere with treatment. So always make sure that you're letting us know so that we can give you the okay and, you know, make sure that the treatment is working as effective as possible. And so you'll see that there's a focus on mushrooms, teas, herbs, soy, and healthy fats. And it, and always, sorry. You also, I know that there's some controversy with soy. I know that phytoestrogens, I think people are worried that it'll have somewhat of an estrogen-like reaction in the body. However, that's still inconclusive. It's still recommended to include, you know, a moderate amount of soy-type foods in the diet. And it's been researched to find, or it's been researched that the most benefit you're going to have is by starting soy foods or whole soy foods in the diet in your adolescence. So, you know, for anybody who has kids, I would recommend, you know, trying to introduce soy into their diet now so that they can benefit from it later on. All right. Also, the Mediterranean diet can help with, you know, keeping inflammation at bay. My take on this is that in order to be okay with having, you know, more servings of breads, grains, and cereals, you'll see it at the bottom here, very much like the American Food Guide Pyramid. You know, it's important to be physically active. The anti-inflammation diet that you see here, you'll see that the, you know, fruits and vegetables are at the bottom and are what you really want to have more of. But I feel like in Europe, a lot of people are walking more and, you know, just more physically active. So they can afford to have more of the the carbohydrate type foods, you know, then I would say, like here in the U.S., I would recommend more fruits and vegetables here if you're not as physically active. Okay, so yeah, basically key is, you know, having a good variety and, you know, trying to keep everything in moderation. Okay, so the microbiome, our gut. So there's been so much research on the gut microbiome in the past 10, 20 years, and we're learning more about how maintaining a strong gut flora can improve our digestion, strengthen our immune system, maintain healthy weight, and improve our sleep and brain function. I mean, there's trillions of both good and bacteria in our digestive system, and these include bacteria, viruses, protozoa, fungi, and I mean, I don't want to go more in-depth about these today, but if you guys are interested, it could definitely be a future topic. So yeah, just let us know, and I can, you know, feel free to also email me or call me on the side. I can provide my information if you want more information about the microbiome. But how to strengthen our gut microbiome. So prebiotics are components in our diet that help to feed the good bacteria in our digestive system. You'll see that it's more so the fibers in our foods. So inulin can be found in chicory root, dandelion greens, Jerusalem artichoke, garlic, asparagus. Beta-glucan can be found in barley, whole oats, shiitake and maitake mushrooms, as well as seaweed and algae. You really want to make sure that you're doing a variety because there's so many different strains of bacteria, you really want to feed all of them. If we're eating the same thing every day, we're only feeding a certain amount of them. So, you know, we're kind of losing out on some of our good bacteria. Because if we're not feeding them, they're just going to kind of dwindle and they're not going to be able to overall just kind of keep our gut lining strong. Also including fermented foods that contain probiotics is a good idea. Sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, yogurt, miso, and tempeh are often higher in probiotics, as well as including a probiotic supplement. Again, when it comes to supplements, always discuss it with us so that we can give you the okay. And also, you know, if you are given the okay, always looking for a probiotic that has multiple strains. Again, we don't want a lot of one particular bacteria. We want a diverse group of good bacteria in our digestive system. And so in this, by feeding the good bacteria in our colon, we're really trying to keep the bad microbes like E. coli, C. diff, and fungi that are already in there at bay and keeping the lining of our gut strong. Anytime you have an overgrowth of bad bacteria, you'll start to get little holes in the lining of your colon that microbes can escape through and then start to wreak havoc on your body. And you'll experience, again, things like brain fog or headaches, fatigue, or other symptoms. So with that, you know, there's a lot of online resources. You can get information about nutrition and cancer. I really like the American Institute for Cancer Research, which is #1. ChemoCare is a great source for finding information on how to manage symptoms or side effects from treatment. And then Cook for Your Life. I don't know if anybody's been on that website, but Ann Ogden, she's the founder of Cook for Your Life. She's been through a couple of cancers herself and has provided a site that gives recipes and videos to kind of help people cook more healthfully. And it I think there is a link where you can actually find recipes, I guess, for certain symptoms that you might be having. And with that, we'll go over some questions. From the radiation, you definitely want to make sure that it's medical grade honey if you're using it topically or like as a medicine, because otherwise there can be, some bacteria in there that can lead to infection. So medical grade honey if you're using it like as a topical healing, but honey in itself is definitely good to, to have, but in moderation. You don't want to have too much. Again, it's a sugar. So, I think a lot of patients are on dexamethasone or a certain type of steroid that can cause your blood sugars to go up. So anything like sugar or honey or, anything that's going to break down to sugars is going to cause your blood sugars to raise up pretty quickly. So raw honey, I'm, all for. That's completely fine. I hope I answered your question. Recommend a probiotic brand. So for we're not necessarily supposed to be recommending particular brands just because, there's not so much research in terms of probiotics and cancer. However, I know it's definitely just trying to steer you in the right direction. I would say something like a Renew Life is something that I would use. You want to try to look for something that has 5 or more strands of good bacteria. And you want to email me, we can go over specific probiotics that may be helpful. I think it just depends on how much you're having total. If you're having like just kind of like a hard candy and you're not having anything for say 2 hours, and you have like a half cup of ice cream, I think that's fine. It's not enough sugar in those servings that's going to really affect your blood sugars, unless of course you are on a steroid. And in those cases, what I typically recommend is trying to pair it with a protein, a healthy fat, and or fiber source, because what that does is it kind of interferes with the absorption of sugar. It slows down that uptake of sugar, so that your blood sugars aren't, raising. Yeah, so for example, like a protein, a healthy fat, and fiber. So for example, I don't know if this sounds at all appealing to anybody, but like say if you're going to have some ice cream, chopping up some walnuts, because that has some protein, or almonds, that both have protein, fiber, and healthy fats in there. So, just kind of mixing it with some nuts. I even sprinkle a little bit of milled flaxseed in there. It doesn't have a strong flavor. If anything, it's more the consistency. So, just add enough to, I guess, so that you're able to tolerate it. And those types of strategies can help keep your blood sugars from raising pretty quickly. Yeah, I think it's just more so trying to find low sugar options, like something like a dark chocolate, that doesn't use the artificial sweeteners, and just kind of trial and error, like finding things that don't have artificial sweeteners that can satisfy your sweet craving. Yeah, I think I would want to work with that person more closely. That way we can kind of take a look at the diet and see what would work, because everybody's different. And, you know, certain people are willing to try things, whereas other people aren't so, are a little bit more picky. So, yeah, I think I would want to work with that person, I guess, more closely, just to kind of get an idea of what she'd be willing to do. I focus on the whole foods because the components in whole foods, they work synergistically. So yeah, I mean, with the fibers and the like vitamin C and, you know, the different components of foods, they help to absorb things better. They help to just kind of make things work better. When you isolate a particular antioxidant, you know, oftentimes in supplements that they're on at like high doses where there's a possibility of an interaction with a particular medication or treatment. So having them in whole, you know, foods is going to be ideal, because it's just overall going to be better absorbed and work better for the body. Otherwise, you know, you're skipping out on fiber, you're skipping out on a lot of other antioxidants that you can get, because, you know, some foods have multiple antioxidants in their in the whole food. So yeah, I would do more so whole foods versus supplements. I would consider maybe looking into maybe doing something like a digestive enzyme. With digestive enzymes, you want to take it more so with your meal versus alone, because yeah, they're really used for helping to break down food that's already in the stomach. So yeah, you usually want to take it like before you have a meal. That way, it's working together with whatever you're eating and breaking it down. Yeah, because it doesn't necessarily sit there and wait for food to come in. You know, different, like the pH kind of changes, and enzymes like to be in a more acidic environment to function. So yeah, I think it would be best to have it more so with your meal. No, they're not processed in the liver. Probiotics are meant to just kind of find their way into the colon. They're not necessarily absorbed and processed through the rest of the body. They're just kind of traveling down the digestive system and make their way, hopefully, down to the colon to kind of, you know, build the healthy bacteria in your colon. So I don't think that it would necessarily interfere with the Lynparza. With everybody, it's kind of like a trial and error, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean, you can have the constipation paste for however long you want to continue it. If it's working for you, I would say continue it, because it's, you know, it has a good amount of good stuff, you know, for your body. And if it's, you know, allowing you to have more regular bowel movements, then by any means, you know, continue. Again, it's about 2 to 3 teaspoons a day is what we, you know, would recommend for that benefit. Both contain particular antioxidants that can help. Again, you know, there are certain circumstances that you may want to avoid coffee, you know, for like if you have heart issues. The fact that you're doing caffeine-free is completely fine. Even caffeine-free coffee tends to have a little bit of caffeine. So sometimes even people who experience significant reflux can be affected by coffee. Herbal teas are completely fine. You can have as much as you want. However, some herbal teas do have a component called licorice root. Licorice root in large amounts has been shown to kind of interfere with certain medications. So if you have a question about that, you know, feel free to reach out to me and let me know. Definitely chemotherapy, because it's systemic. It can affect our microbiome. So, again, when it comes to trying to keep that microbiome strong, just if you're able to tolerate it, try to include those foods on the list that have probiotics, and include, if you're able to tolerate it, again, foods that have prebiotics to kind of help, keep the amount of good bacteria, at a good level. If you feel like you're not getting enough of those, again, a probiotic, may be appropriate. So I think just discussing it with the team, I know Marcy usually defers those questions to me. So yeah, feel free to email me or call me directly if you are having, if you feel like you're not getting enough of the prebiotics and the fermented foods in your diet. We can kind of go over what would be appropriate in your situation. In those instances, we typically recommend things like, I don't know if you'd be open to this, but salmon that's canned, because there's they leave kind of like the bone in there, and it's like soft enough, it kind of like becomes like a powdery substance that can have a good amount of calcium in it. I want to say a serving of like 2 to 3 ounces contains around 200, maybe 300 milligrams of calcium. Also the dairy substitutes, so like your almond milk, your oat milk, they sometimes, depending on the brand, try to mimic what's in dairy, so they can fortify their products with both calcium, vitamin A, and vitamin D. Anytime you have calcium, you want to include the vitamin D or vitamin K or magnesium. Those 3 help to absorb calcium better. Green leafy vegetables tend to have a good amount of calcium too, but you have to eat a lot of it to get a decent amount. So yeah, I think the best non-dairy source would be like canned salmon or sardines. You can also take sometimes we'll recommend, if there's not enough in the diet, calcium citrate or calcium carbonate. Calcium citrate tends to get absorbed better, again, accompanied by vitamin D to help it absorb better.
Thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Paula. This was amazing and so valuable.
Thank you. I appreciate your guys' interest, and always feel free to let me know what other topics you're interested in, and I can come back and discuss